Once again, don't talk about my tree before I talk about you. Welcome or welcome back. You have made it to part 2 of this particular Design With Me series for this made up brand that I pulled out of my back pockets. I almost said something else. Called Serenity Spaces. In case you have missed it, we are designing a brand identity for a service-based business. That overarching idea was recommended to us by a subscriber, and we then took that and got a brief from Gemini, Google Gemini, and here we are. If you did not watch the first episode, obviously get up out of here and go watch the first episode. I'll link it up here because I'm so nice. But other than that, we are now moving on into part 2. For part 2 today, I'm thinking, once again, this is unscripted. I just sat down. I'm ready to work on it again. So here we are. For part 2, I'm thinking we will go into color palette, graphic elements, if we have any. I think we have a few. And then some examples of our photography style or photography guidelines. I think that will be the meat and potatoes of our brand. I will separately add in anything else that I need to move into part 3. But I think as far as going through a process, those will be the next 3 things that we'll look at today. Last I left you all, I did move into the logo design for Serenity Spaces. Bit of background, in case you forgot, Serenity Spaces is a professional organizing brand, and they specialize in small spaces for individuals and families. I took the liberty of identifying that this may be for people who like to get a little more creative with their space. I think it goes hand in hand because people with small spaces tend to need to get creative with their spaces. So there's that. But anyway, Serenity is in the name, so naturally it would be a part of their mission to create a sense of calm in spaces that can get chaotic. I can relate. I live in a 700 something square foot apartment in the city. I have a lot of things. I kind of paused on the logo and just left it where it was. Granted, in real time, this would have taken me weeks, and it could, if I let it, it could take me months and years. It could literally never be finished. But for the sake of moving on, we gotta make decisions and stand in them. That's part of the hard part of all of this. I, off camera, did go ahead and play around with the logo a bit more. I went back and forth between typefaces like I started to do in the last episode. I debated with myself on how I wanted the weights to differentiate between the different typefaces that I used, how lost it could get when I scaled down. I thought about whether or not I wanted to touch the logo mark that I created. I ultimately decided not to because I like it as is, and I do like the main typeface that I'm working with. I like the character of it. I like the flow. I think it works with all the things we identified in the first episode. We do have this beautiful board of brainstorming, and I think it just fits with all the things that I mentioned when I was brainstorming. And so I'm going to go ahead and sit with this logo, but I did make some small adjustments. There were some small things like adjusting spacing, increasing the size of the S so that it kind of lined up with the bottom of the Y, and therefore spaces looked like it was meant to fit in between there instead of kind of just floating around. Little things like that. And then I also started to identify what the rest of the logo suite would look like. So at this point right now, I am bringing you onto my computer. I have been looking at what we could possibly do with the color palette. I was definitely leaning toward using some type of greens, a mint, a pistachio, something like that. When I thought of Serenity, that's just what came to mind. I also thought maybe I should go into the blues for the pop of color. Our brief did call for a neutral palette with pops of color or with a pop of color. And so I'm really just trying to identify what that one signature color is going to be for the brand. So I started swatching a few things here, but then I ended up trying to play around with some sort of purple color, a lavender, a periwinkle, anything that may fit in that realm. Those are 2 different colors. By the way, I'm just listing ideas right now. I'm thinking of things that might fit into that range because Serenity, calm, lavender. It makes sense. I don't know if you all remember, but some time ago I did a give me a brief, which is basically I receive a surprise brief and have to work with that brief in X amount of time. I did one for a brand called Calm Cleanse, and I worked with purple in that brand because of the same reason. And so not necessarily wanting to use the same color palette, but sort of thinking along those lines. I like using something that is a little less on the nose when it comes to Serenity, and I feel like green and blue is probably just the opposite of that. It might be more expected. I think I want to use purple, but I still need to develop some ideas. What I'm also thinking about is the fact that neutral could be a number of things. So if we're going back to where we last left our brainstorming slide, where I had neutrals, I had a lot of tans, browns, you know, that type of neutral, not a black and white, not a charcoal and cream, not that type of thing, but browns basically. And I do still like that idea, and I'm wondering if that is something I still want to incorporate here or not. I don't know. We're going to play around with it and figure it out. But in order for me to kind of see these palettes in action, I think I'm going to go through the process of creating a stylescape for this brand, or 2 stylescapes for this brand, so that we can kind of figure out what makes the most sense. And I think that will help me make a lot more progress moving forward with everything else after that fact. If you do not know what a stylescape is, basically like a highly curated mood board, for lack of a better word. It's a collage of things on a long board that are specific to the brand that we are building, and give you an idea of the look and feel as a whole, versus a mood board that kind of gives the idea of a vibe, but not the particular brand's look and feel. I made a video not too long ago on stylescapes and how I build them. I will link that up here as well. Sorry I keep redirecting you, but we don't got to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and build a couple fairly quickly, and we'll come back and discuss.
Back to the basics, been a lot of things, but I never been basic. Run around bases, came from the basement, never been shameless. So I got stay in the streets, get dangerous, so I might bang it. Don't like hanging unless you family, please don't claim it. Like what you claiming, what you saying, what you bout and what you need. I'm at the house, ain't at the club. I'm really chilling with my seed. I love my poppy, put me on. I'm really chilling with OGs. Don't test my gangster, think I'm bitch made. We gon' fuck around. Tryna be here for a while in a good time, but we ain't stressed out, just good wine. When I look in the mirror, yeah, I look fine. Good people, times, and good wine. Good wine, good wine, good wine, good wine. Tryna be here for a while in a good time, but we ain't stressed out, just good wine. When I look in the mirror, yeah, I look fine. Good people, times, and good wine. Good wine.
All right, so we made it back. I kind of already knew what direction I wanted to go in, of course. So the stylescapes are very, very similar, but it is gonna help me choose a direction in terms of which color palette I'm gonna use. I do need to obviously like actually determine what typeface I want to use if I'm changing these things, whatever. But moving into describing what we have here. So if you went back and watched as I directed the other stylescape video, hope you did, so this makes sense. But if you didn't, brief overview. These are our heroes, our target audience. Imagine these 2 young ladies as 2 people that would hire us for our services. They live in tiny apartments in some city. They have a lot of crap. They're calling us like, hey girl, please help me, but make it fun, make it cool. That's where we come in. So this is who we're speaking to. I went in the direction of both the lavender as our pops of color and a green, almost like a lime green, a bright green, whatever. I did not go for a black and white primary in either of these palettes because I still want it to feel colorful, but kind of creating palettes that the neutrals on them can feel very much like a black and white, if that makes sense. And then we also have our signature color included. So moving through here, obviously we have our logo. We have examples of what like the business card could look like, what the homepage on the website could look like. These are all just rough ideas at this point. Nothing set in stone, but you get the idea. And then I also wanted to point out some of the different uses of some of the graphic elements. And so I am going to add a couple more graphic elements in this video, but for here I did start to break apart the logo. So for a second, I'm just going to delete this. As you can see here, this shape is part of the logo, and it also appears on the website. It appears on the business card over here. just having that shape appear as some sort of like a label mechanism, because that is what it feels like in the logo as well. We talked about that in the first part, but playing around with how parts of the logo mark itself can also lend itself to being a graphic element shown in various places and uses throughout the visual identity as a whole. I also have included some photography. I do want to, this is kind of giving an idea of the types of photos that I would include in the guidelines. So aside from showing like people in their homes and just like zoomed out overall environments of organized homes, I also think because of the input that I gave for the brief of this being for like our target audience being people who are not necessarily members of the beige living room club, they're a little more fun, have a lot more things going on, which could make it harder to organize, but you also want to find things that fit within their aesthetic to organize their space. I also want to be able to highlight some of what that looks like. And so items like this that you might find in the home of someone who is a little more eclectic, a little more fun in their design style, but these are also practical solutions. So that's kind of where Serenity Spaces is coming in. So those are some of the photos that I would like to also include in the brand. That being said, I have a decision to make here. At this point, I'll pause. Comment down below if you think we're leaning more towards option A or option B. I won't say anything until I reveal the actual color palette, but this is where we are right now, and I will be making a decision based on one of these two palettes. From here, I also thought of a few other things that I want to include, and so when it comes to the graphic elements, I think I do also want to include some more like shapes like this that can kind of serve as like another version of a label, or stickers, or just like some illustrations that could be included in here. I don't want to go too heavy with the illustrations, but I do think they would work well in here. So I do want to make a few illustrations of some of the things that I did include in my brainstorming. Up here, some words like shelves, boxes, hangers, just a few, maybe 3 to 4 illustrations that I will create and include in here as well. So let's go ahead and do some of those.
Never switch on the homies in the day ones. They didn't wanna open doors, so we made some. Take a bow on these haters like I'm Trey Young. That direct deposit hitting like a bass drum. Incoming, coming, coming, coming. Keep it incoming, coming, coming, coming. Keep it incoming. Never switch on the that I came up with. No new friends with the same old clique.
Now that I have those included, I am pulling some images from various sources that can kind of serve to the photography styles that I mentioned before, or like the examples of photography that I mentioned before, explained before, that I would like to appear in this visual identity. And after all of that, for today's session, here is where we ended up with the visual identity, including the color palette that I've selected. I think this is coming along quite well. I am presenting them to you all as a style guide, a mini style guide, just showing all of the components that we put together thus far. From here, I'm going to take everything that I've determined basically for this visual identity, and you know how I am. I probably will change some things. I'm actually gonna try not to. I'm gonna try not to change anything. I might though, but I'm gonna take all of this and turn it into some collateral. So what that means is I'm going to put together a list of things, like really cool ideas of things that would work well for marketing for this business, things that will set us apart from other professional organizing companies. That could be anything from creating materials to attract new business, or something that we give away to current clients that lives in their home to remind them that we exist, or if that is something that exists in our physical office space, if we have one. Anything of that nature will be created in the next episode using all of this branding. As usual, comment your thoughts down below. I actually have not given you an emoji to comment in a long time, and so put the blue couch emoji down below. If you don't know what that looks like, please check my pinned comment. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video, of course, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.